Hello. I think I'm live, but let me check. I always gotta check. Because sometimes the internet is funky. You know, Verizon had that blackout a couple of days ago. Oh, that's so cute. I love the thumbnail. I'm complimenting my own thumbnail. But yeah, let's look at this. All right. Oh, I don't even have the volume up. Okay, sounds like it's working. It is working. We are live. So let me just make a few adjustments here. I want to make sure that the description is good. Saturn, Uttara Bhadrapada, Uranus, and Krittika. Sorry guys, I should have done this beforehand. I was in the middle of doing other work. Okay, it looks like everything's here. Okay. So I don't want to waste any time and I want to get to it. This video is about Saturn being in Uttara Bhadrapada and Uranus being in Krittika. Yesterday they made an exact aspect for the first time in 1,000 years, guys. 1,000 years, isn't that crazy? And so that's why I wanted to come on and make this video. So as usual, I have my script. I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna get into your 12 signs. We have this powerful alignment happening in the sky for the first time in over 1,000 years. Nobody in maybe the next couple of lifetimes will experience this sextile coming together in the sky. So this is very unique for all of us here on Earth right now. And let's jump into this really quick and get the script. I have been working on some other non-astrology related stuff, so I'm gonna have to switch over really quick and get this done. All right. So no one is talking about this, guys. No one is talking about this. No one is talking about this. At least I haven't seen anyone talking about this, which is astounding. Because I don't particularly think I am all that unique. But maybe I am, who knows? I don't know what is going on here with my Google Docs, but that's fine. That's fine. It's just gonna be a little annoying. Maybe I can switch this over. Sorry guys for all the technical errors. Oh man, I gotta wear my face mask. My skin looks dry anyway. Don't judge me for that. Don't judge me, okay? I'm in a vulnerable place right now. With coming out of grad school, I don't know, something about it, you feel a little lost. And I know that happens, that transition phase happens. Because so many people that I've seen, maybe not so many, maybe just 2 or 3 that I've seen coming out of grad school, they're just like on to the next stage or they're looking for the next thing to do and whatever. And so I know what I want to do. I have my plan and everything, but then I'm getting off topic. So let's get into this. We have a rare, powerful cosmic alignment that has happened in our sky, is happening, currently underway. Its exact aspect and alignment happened yesterday on the 19th. Happy Martin Luther King Day, everyone. This rare and powerful 1,000-year alignment is the sextile between Uranus and Krittika and Saturn and Uttara Bhadrapada. No one is talking about this. It has not been seen in our skies since 848 AD. That is correct, guys. 848 AD. I hope you guys are just as shocked as I was, because let me tell you, when I was just looking up just to get an understanding, getting a feel of this, I guess, alignment in the sky, I thought it was just going to be a normal everyday sextile between, like, you know, Uranus and Saturn that I could just talk about really quick. We already sort of talked about the alignment happening for 500 years, and that was specifically having to do, let me clarify. I did a video on this already, and you might want to go back and check that out. I'll link those videos in the description bar below after this so that I am not jumping from place to place and you guys can get the full understanding of what these energies are like. And I did the video from a Western perspective, and I said, you know, Uranus is in Gemini, Saturn at the time was in Pisces, but from a Vedic perspective, Uranus would have been in Taurus and Saturn still in Pisces. Now, I officially wanted to do things on a nakshatra level. So I wanted to go in deeper. If you don't know what nakshatras are, in Vedic astrology, they are the lunar mansions. So there's 27 lunar mansions, and they all have these sort of archetypes that tell you like a deeper layer of the sign. So each sign has about 3 nakshatras in them. And so when we talk about Uttara Bhadrapada, that happens in the Vedic sign of Pisces. And when we talk about Krittika, that actually occurs within the sign of Aries and Taurus when it comes to Vedic astrology. So we have Saturn and Uttara Bhadrapada and Uranus and Krittika forming this tight sextile, looking each other in the eyes and this sort of cosmic love affair. It is the structured and resilient but refined energy of Saturn and Uttara Bhadrapada meeting the surprising, action-oriented, principled nature of Krittika. And so they come together and reveal these powerful energies that we haven't experienced within over 1,000 years. And if you're coming in for the first time, I am going through the astrology, and I will be going through your sign at some point. But right now, I'm giving you the intro, and I'm letting you know what things are like, what is happening here, and what is unfolding in our skies in this rare, powerful alignment here. So in my previous video that I was talking about, I had spoken about the generalities of this placement. And the last time Krittika was in general Taurus, Uranus was in Krittika or just general Taurus, and it aligned with Uttara Bhadrapada, or not Uttara Bhadrapada exactly, but aligned with Saturn and Pisces. That was about 500 years ago. And so when scaling and going deeper into the nakshatras, and I said, okay, what nakshatras, when was the last time these 2 nakshatras with Uranus being in Krittika and Saturn being Uttara Bhadrapada lined up? And that happened to be in 848 AD to 847 AD, over 1,000 years ago. I think it's like 1,020 or 1,220, something like that. That's not that important. So, what could these energies mean? They're aligning for the first time. And because this is something that is so rare, astronomically rare, no pun intended, is that it's hard to get the entire feel of it, right? I can't go back for another 1,000 years. History probably wouldn't have been written, and it probably wouldn't be even close to accurate, right? Even just going back 1,000 years ago, we don't know all the details. We're kind of guessing a little bit. There are written documentations, and there are stories and all sorts of ways which way people document information. But you know how it is. You hear things from the grapevine, things change and transform over the years, legends formed, etc. So I did my best to gather the information from this period. Just a couple of things. I didn't want to make it as long as the last video, which was 3 hours. And I was like, oh man, I'm tired of being here so long. And I'm sure you guys were tired of seeing my face during that time, that video. And you can go back and look at that video where I talk about Rahu and Sestabisha. But when we're talking about this alignment and the fact that we don't have another placement or another period in the sky that we can go back and look at things, it does become a little bit frustrating, right? Because we have to zero in on the energies of what does Saturn, Uttara Bhadrapada bring? What does Krittika, Uranus and Krittika bring? And what is it like when those energies come together? And it's better when we can have these repeating patterns in various different segments in time. So being able to only have one segment can be a little frustrating, but if we look at now, we look at then, perhaps we can see the overlaps. So let's get into it. Let's get into what does this feel like when we have Uranus and Krittika sextiling Saturn. So my general thought process when I'm overviewing this sextile is that Uranus brings about obviously the energy of spontaneity, breaking free, and honestly, it kind of reminds me of Rahu in the fact that it's, how do I say this? It not circumvents, but it pretty much decides it wants to go against the grain. Very unique, very gem-like nature. You're like, this is a rare breed, a rare find. That's how Uranus energy sort of moves within the astrological sphere. And when we think about it being in Krittika, the knife, the place that wants to purify and burn, then we're talking about sudden breaks from things that can not be in alignment with things that feel maybe moralistic, or even so just aren't good for you, or even just things that feel inauthentic, because Krittika does want that authenticity, right? And then when we talk about Saturn's nature in Uttara Bhadrapada, well, Saturn is this ultimate refinement planet. It wants you to level up in all different circumstances in life. It says, I want you to do your best. I see you got some flaws here, here, and here. And I know it's hard to face them, and I know you don't want me to point them out, but I'm going to do that anyway, especially when Saturn's in its own nakshatra of Uttara Bhadrapada, right? Krittika is a sun-ruled nakshatra, and Saturn and Uttara Bhadrapada is a Saturn-ruled nakshatra. So Saturn feels at home here. Uranus, there's no Uranian nakshatra placement. So it's hard to know what Uranus feels like being in Krittika. I mean, we can look at the past times, and it has been very tense and warlike with Uranus going through Krittika. But it does bring about needed change, right? Needed transformations in the system. Feeling like, okay, I don't want to be a sheep to authority. I don't want someone to push me around. I do want some sort of independence and the ability to have my own autonomy. One thing though about Krittika is there is that level of ambition and hyper independence, but at the same time, I notice with just Krittika people, there does seem to be a neglect when it comes to maybe focusing on the internal world, and there is this feeling that can sort of be burnt out. And it was kind of funny because I was looking at a few social media things lately, and people have said things like, I feel like 2026 has melatonin in it. Maybe that's just my side of the social media sphere, but I've just seen so many people said how they're tired, or quite opposite, where they feel like they can't sleep. Like they're just like, oh my gosh, I can't sleep at all. And what I'm thinking about when I look at these energies is that there might be a reason that people are sort of in this space where they feel like their energies are a bit off, right? Number one, Krittika wants you to move. It wants you to get out of a state of stagnation. And so when you're starting to feel this sense of lethargy, it can feel as though, all right, there are things in my life that aren't bringing me satisfaction or aren't bringing me happiness, or there might be this weight of authority or external events that I can't control that just feels like burnout to me. And I'm not sure how to emotionally regulate through these circumstances. And that can apply to the feeling of insomnia, or that feeling of just feeling tired, feeling tired. And sorry for my appearance, guys. I know my hair's a mess. I got to fix some things, and my skin's a little bit tired here. But let's get into this. So when we talk about things that were happening in 840 AD with the transit that's going on in the sky, I don't know what word I was going to say there, but with the transit that's going on in the sky, then we want to talk about how when systems fail to protect us. And this circumstance in particular I'm highlighting are the Vikings. And so in 847 AD, the Vikings were peak invasion of the Carolingian Empire, which was made up of like modern day France and Germany, okay? And so before 840 AD, the idea of a king was that the king was this big protector, right? And excuse me, guys, I might got a little gas there. The king was the big protector of the entire land. But when the Vikings started using the Seine, which is like a river in Paris, and using the Seine to hit the heart of the empire, the king was, how do I say? He was too far away and too slow to help the average person through all these raids. And survival became this necessity, right? The King Charles, or whoever this is, King Charles the Bald, that's what they called him. King Charles the Bald, he essentially was paying the Vikings ransoms. And this was, in his mind, his way of saying, I'm going to stop the Vikings from attacking us and getting to the heart of the city and destroying things by paying them off, right? Another issue with this and what was going on with, Charles the Bald was that he was fighting a lot with his brothers, okay? And they were basically fighting over land, who's ruling. You know how it is with politics. You know, they're trying to make sure I have my piece of the pie, and et cetera, et cetera. Not really things that people care about, but it's the things that people in authority and leadership care about. I have the most land, I have the most power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So they're fighting all these fights, but essentially if the Vikings were to show up on somebody's farm today, the king's army wouldn't arrive for weeks, you know, even if he decided he could pay attention. And I wanted to say the issue when it came to paying the Vikings this ransom, you know, was the fact that, how do I say this? Was essentially the fact that the Vikings sort of took this as the, okay, you know, modern or old school France, kind of Germany, they're giving us plenty of money, right? All we have to do is keep attacking them and provoking them and destroying and pillaging their cities, and they'll just keep paying us money, right? And they'll just keep giving us what we want. We want gold, we want money, we want silver. I think he paid them off in like huge chunks of silver, right? And it was not exactly an ideal situation, right? Because it pretty much looks like the king is just bowing down to invaders. There's a reason that the US is like, okay, we don't negotiate with terrorists, right? Because things like this happen. The Vikings go back, they tell their friends, they tell their enemies, they tell other fellow Vikings. Not that the Vikings were one big group. They're actually kind of factions, you know, like pirates. They didn't come together like a gang, like, you know. It was just like, okay, we just saw this huge group of Vikings. They came back and they've got a ton of silver. They're on the come up and they're bragging about how they held Charles the Bald for ransom and all of that jazz, right? And so they're bragging, they're telling everybody. Other Vikings, they say, well, we want our bag too. They start coming to France, driving up or riding up on their boats, the Seine, and attacking and pillaging more villages. And King Charles the Bald would keep giving them more silver, right? Okay, so that's when it becomes very problematic. Very, very problematic. That is not something that you want to do. Another thing is that was happening at this time is the way that the king was getting a lot of this money, this silver, this gold, is that he was going through a lot of the churches, right? He would take money and silver and offerings from them, and that is what he would give to the Vikings. And as time went on, years and years go on, he's pretty much draining and destroying the economy by paying people off. And it's actually interesting how we have this leaders bowing sort of energy, because even now today in the news, there are these stories coming out of Europe about people critiquing European leaders for sort of bowing to Trump and allowing him to get his way when it comes to tariffs or land or whatever it is that his demands are. It's almost like the US or the Vikings, and the Europe is still back in this position of, I'm just going to give you what you want so you don't attack me, right? You know, that's kind of like the energy that's still being repeated today. So I thought that that part was interesting that we see happening as well. But anyway, back to what I was saying about the everyday people who lived on the land, who lived on the farms, right? So these people are terrified out of their minds. They have a king that's not protecting them. They have a king that's just giving them money. They're stealing from churches. They're draining the economy. The king has no backbone. He doesn't want to fight it. He's busy fighting with his brothers, and he's not a brave person, okay? He thinks he can just pay the Vikings off with money. Doesn't work, right? Doesn't work at all. And all he does is get these people to continue, how do I say it? Continue to keep continue to keep coming. Sorry, guys, I'm looking at my studio, and for some reason I can't see the views or anything like that. So I don't know when to pause if somebody's coming in. I'll have to just do random natural pauses. So if you're coming in now, I am doing an overview of Saturn, Sextiles, Uranus, which is in Krittika, and Saturn is in Uttara Bhadrapada. They haven't sextiled in an exact sextile in over 1,000 years. And so I'm giving an overview of the history of what happens when the system fails to protect us. We're talking about the Vikings attacks on what would be modern day France, Germany, and how King Charles the Bald, which is what they called him, failed to protect his people and decided to pay the Vikings off, which didn't work because obviously if you pay off ransoms, then more people are just going to keep coming because they're like, well, you're just giving us money. We have no incentive to not attack you, right? Anyway, so what the peasants or the everyday people decided to do is they start to look for their local strongman. Who is their local strongman? It's the local wealthy guy, right? It's the person who has the horses, the weapons, the private security. You know, it's almost like going to your local mobster or gangster, right? Whatever the case may be. I don't know what would be the equivalent today. I guess today people would probably go to private security, right? And hire them. But here we have the local strongman. They have the horses, they have the riches, they have the money. And so people said, all right, we need protection because these Vikings, if they come through and they try to like destroy us, pillage us, destroy, you know, pretty much destroy all our lives and everything. We don't want that to happen, actually. So could you please protect me? And in return, the lords of the land would say, all right, I'll protect you, but you don't own your land anymore. In fact, I own it, you know. That is what you'll have to trade. You know, you have to give me your crops. And not only do you have to give me your crops, but you can't leave and you have to work for me, right? That's pretty much the deal. Not really a great deal, you know, but what are people going to do? They can either just leave and hope for the best and try to fight it on their own and hope they don't get attacked by any Vikings on their way out the door. Or they can stay in their land with their family, their friends, and everything that they know and just kind of stay protected by these hidden walls. And you know, actually what's interesting around this time is those tower moat places where you see on old castles where you have the bridge with the tower on it. Those are the things that started to be built a lot more around this time just because of those Viking attacks. So if you think about the history and you look back, and if you're ever in one of these castles or places in France, you'll know that, okay, that's the reason why they've built this sort of defense system, was to protect against Vikings coming up that river and to give them a little bit of, I guess, defense, really. And honestly, what I just described to you is essentially how feudalism became a part of everyday structure and everyday life. So if you ever wanted to know, like, how did it get so that the lords and stuff were essentially owning these peasants and they were living this life of servitude? It had to do with external forces attacking them and them giving away their freedoms and rights, right? So that is kind of the trade-off. That is the trade that they decided to make. Now, let me get a little bit down here. So I'm going to move on here to another place in time, and we are talking about more so of the Arab regions like Baghdad and seeing what was going on for them in 847 AD. So from what I've seen, they were in this age of, how do I say this? Before 847 AD, maybe even a little bit, you know, after then, but really around 847, my dyslexic brain, 847 AD, this is when this sort of transition took place. All right, just wanted to give you the background. So for years, a lot of the Arab regions were in this sort of golden age of intellectualism. So they had a lot of push towards logic and Greek philosophy, and they would interpret everything, even religion, using a more intellectual mindset, right? Very scholarly. So in 847 AD, there was this pivot. The new leader, Ali Mutawaki. Okay, I'm okay. Don't make me pronounce it. Wakil, I think it's Mutawakil. Okay. And let me just help you with spelling. It is AL-MUTA Muta WAKKIL. Okay. He took over and he shut all of that down. He was like, we're done with that. We're done with thinking too hard. I don't want this anymore. He decided that logic being applied to faith was dangerous, and it made the empire soft He said, none of this intellectual stuff. We don't want you to think about that. In fact, he actually forced a lot of lack of logic when it came to religious and legal thought. He actually moved towards more strict literal structure when it came to the interpretation of religious doctrine. And he said, you know, you don't need to ask why. You just need to follow instructions. Follow the rules like I say and do as I say. So just like in Europe at the time, you know, there was this move away from intellectual thought towards a more rigid anti-intellectual structure to keep people in control. You know, it's almost as if, like, while Europe was sort of building walls when it came to stone, like we talked about with those towers and all of that, the Arab world was building walls of the mind and ditching logic for strict tradition. So what did this look like? What did this ditch of logic look like? Well, the curriculum flipped overnight, essentially. If you were in school, instead of the students studying math and astrology and religion and science, it's shifted into 100%, you know, tradition and repetition. It's very much like, you just need to know the religious doctrine, okay? If we have a scientific fact, like, this is how the stars move, and they study it and they look at the science and they figure out how the stars move. If this contradicted any sort of religious doctrine, then that way of thinking was thrown out. You know, the leader said that's false. We don't like that anymore. It's contradictory to our religious beliefs. Things like public debate, right? So you have these discussions in coffee houses or markets when it comes to philosophy and, you know, science, religion, etc. The things people like to discuss when they come together in these intellectual spaces, those were silenced, okay? It was like you no longer were allowed to ask why or argue your point, and you were expected to just simply memorize the official doctrine and keep it pushing, you know? Even in courtrooms, as I mentioned before, because this applied to legalities as well, judges stopped using sense or independent reasoning for cases. If you were on trial, even if you had a strong, valid defense, it really didn't matter. It just matters, you know, what does the religious text say, word for word? What does our old law say, word for word? We are not applying different things to new situations. We're not hearing new arguments. It doesn't matter, okay? We also have people begin censoring themselves. They self-censored. And the reason that they started self-censoring, obviously, because they saw the people who weren't censoring themselves were being punished. A lot of them were being jailed or flogged. You know, if you push back, there was pretty much, you were made an example of, you know. And so people see that, so they start self-censoring. And, you know, you see that a lot today too, right? You see a lot of people being censored. I've even done it, where there's certain things I'm like, oh, I can't say this because YouTube will ban, YouTube will punish you, YouTube will, you know, take you off your platform. They'll do all sorts of things in different social media, all different contexts. Freedom of speech is rapidly declining. Even now you see news networks, right? They are changing and being open about the fact that they are essentially not going to report the facts, or they're not going to say certain things if they believe the Trump administration will sue them, or some other political figure or whoever, some billionaire, will push back against them. So there's a lot more censorship going on in the world right now. And so I can say that is aligning with what we're experiencing today, unfortunately, but that's happening. And we saw this around this time as well. You can also make an argument for a lack of education and this culture of anti-intellectualism going on here as well. Sorry, guys, I lost my place in my script. And so, as I was saying, this is exactly what we're seeing currently right now. We're moving away from expert logic and data-driven decisions and discussions. Even now, which I think this started a little bit before Uranus and Saturn made this sextile, but you started to have these, opinion-based conversations when it came to the news. Like they'd have a story and then you'd have some sort of expert on. They really, sometimes they were experts, sometimes they were just entertainment, right? And they would give their opinions on things that didn't necessarily need their opinions on, right? The news job is supposed to be to report the facts and get to the point. They're supposed to be this trusted source. But you can sort of see how they all put their narrative and spin on it to propagate whatever message that they would like to put out there. And I think because of this, there has been a major divide. I'm not saying this is the only reason, or maybe this is just a result of that divide, that news media outlets that were once supposed to be upheld to a certain regard of fact checking and intellectualism has been, I guess, degraded to think pieces about, gosh knows, Democrats versus Republicans, rather than actually reporting the lives and the issues that are going on in the world right now. There's just a lot of propaganda that's happening, and I'm not going to take that out because that's definitely for sure. And so even now we do have a lot of people who are sort of pushing back towards fixed traditions, think make America great again. And I'm not saying that this particular aspect has done that. I think there's a lot more aspects going on in the sky and transits that push towards this behavior. But definitely when we talk about this going on in the world with Uranus being in Krittika and Saturn being in Uttara Bhadrapada and them sextiling each other, likely this energy is going to amplify, right? It's highlighting that people are going to feel more so of this fixed traditional mindset, or even be so more individualistic based value rather than going by logic or new information. They will close themselves off to that because, number one, those sources might not be trusted, and number two, it maybe just doesn't feel right to them. Maybe they just feel a little bit fearful of being manipulated, or they feel as though what they had believed in before let them down, and so they can't open themselves up to new evidence, even if it is correct. So I just want you to know that when we talk about that. Now when we go into the Ghana Empire, because we got to go to Africa. Definitely got to go to Africa. We have a lot going on here, but essentially what was happening in the Ghana Empire, especially in the Sahel region, that's spelled Sahei, Sahel region, that to the north of West Africa, gold fields were profiting. There was just a lot going on when it came to this trans-Saharan gold trade. Okay, they were able to profit a lot by this, which turned the Ghana Empire into this place of legendary wealth. It was booming, and I think that's actually kind of funny because when we were talking about Uranus in Uranus in Taurus, or in that video that I did that I'll link below, Uranus and Gemini for Western astrology, but it would have been in Taurus Vedic astrology. And then we talk about Saturn in Pisces, which is in Vedic, and also within Western, still the same. The last video I did talk about how in West Africa there was this boom of scholars, money, trade, and similar to that period that happened 500 years prior, 1,000 years from here, prior to today, that same energy still happened even though we went deeper on a nakshatra level. Okay, so if I can say that clearer, 500 years previously, West Africa was booming. 1,000 years previously, West Africa was booming. So just wanted to say something about this alignment, whether it is a wide sextile or an exact sextile, which this was, does seem to be good for West Africa. At least I hope, I'm hoping. Fingers crossed, right? Anyway, there was a gold trade for Ghana, the Ghana Empire. A lot of cities were expanding, markets were booming, new cultures were being introduced, things were being upgraded more frequently. There was more access to things. I will say a lot of the growth happened in the urban areas, and that seems to be just a historical, how do I say this? A historical pattern that seems to be occurring over time. Where there's growth, it does seem to be happening more so in cities rather than rural areas. But it's not like the rural areas weren't affected. So because there was more trade, there was actually more access to things like salt. And let's say you were able to get salt once a month. Now that we have this booming trade, you're getting salt once a week from the market, right? This is great because you're allowed to preserve food and generally have an overall better quality to life. So just wanted to say they were being affected in that way. It also gave them access to new tools as well, even in the rural areas. So love that for Ghana. Hopefully we experience a lot of that golden empire. I don't know, the world is, I'll say this, hopefully we experience that expansion today. The world is very much entangled in itself. And so even though I believe that each country has its own sort of astrological chart and feel, or each region has its own astrological chart and feel, I think that because the world is so interconnected now, that it can be hard to pinpoint, okay, what is going to happen specifically in this region. Like, we could be in the US and maybe pockets of the US go through this golden age or golden period like they did in Ghana. Or maybe even pockets of the US, they go through this terrorization like in previous France or Germany, or historical France and Germany, where they're being raided. I will say this, if you think about things from the Vikings perspective, which I don't know if we should, because they were, destroying other people's lives and committing all sorts of heinous crimes and acts against humanity. But they were actually on the come up, I guess. I guess you can look at things that way. So maybe people who are committing crimes are on the come up. I don't know. Hopefully that's none of you astronauts, though. Now, if we talk about the themes, when it comes to behavioral adaptation and then avoiding punishment, that is something that I mentioned earlier, how we see that today. Don't mind me, my nose is just itching. I don't know why it does this. Okay, we see that a lot going on today as well when it comes to our behavioral adaptation that we are experiencing. People are not wanting to be punished for the things that they say, so they censor themselves a lot more. You also have people who aren't as open about maybe their political affiliations because they feel like it's going to lead to a fight. And rightfully so. Your political affiliations are a reflection of your values. And that's obviously going to be a tense subject, especially if your values don't align. So we have that increased self-censorship and conformity that was going on. We also had that, in a way, I'll say this, because in Europe, the people relied on the lords for protection, surrendering land and autonomy where the kings could not defend them. We can sort of see that in a way as, I don't know if it's self-censorship, but it's more so like, I'm going to adapt my behavior to avoid punishment, right? And it's not even punishment, more so violence. And so they adapt their behavior, which is like, I'm giving up my independence to avoid punishment, which I thought was interesting, given that we had Uranus and Krittika, because you would think that Krittika would not be this anti-independence energy coming in. And I think for the most part, it's not. But we shall see. I mean, we can only really look at the history and see how these things played out. And since we only have this one example of a time period, then it gets a little bit more difficult. But I just did find that interesting that you do have that adaptation of behavior that is a little bit more fearful, But I will say there is a fearful side to Krittika, where they're so scared of being hurt that they end up just allowing themselves to be treated like whatever, like they are, expendable, And I think there's a movie, The Expendables or something like that, with Robert Pattinson, who does have Krittika placements. And in that movie, he's just basically being, losing his life all over and over again. And it's a good example of that Krittika energy when it just kind of gives up and doesn't choose to fight back. And I think this is part of that as well. We also have increased access to tools that add improvement to daily lives, which you saw in Ghana. And as I mentioned, we have security traded for autonomy here going on. Now, what does that look like in 2026? So in 2026, we have the Edmund Trust Barometer. And they essentially did this survey that revealed some grievances have developed into insularity. So we have 7 in 10 respondents report an unwillingness or hesitance to trust someone with different values, approaches to social structures, background, or information sources. That's a lot, guys. 7 in 10 respondents. So people are more so isolating away from each other. There's less trust in the air, 70%. And I looked at the study to see their the amount of people that they surveyed. It was about 34,000 people around the globe. So 70% of 34,000 people. That's a lot. Where people just are in this mindset where if you have a different value or a different approach to life, or you're from a different background, you're just not to be trusted. You're just not, it's hard to get people to open up right now. They don't know you, you're not familiar. You know what I mean? It's that feeling going on in the air. So it's almost like it's leaning into the distrustfulness of Krittika that can happen sometimes, which is, it's disappointing. And this is 2026 studies, guys. So a lot of people believe that trade policies will also affect their employer. This is from the same survey. People do not believe it will benefit them, any sort of trade policies. More people are favoring nationalism, which is not a surprise given that we had that 70% mistrust in people of different backgrounds. We also have this individualistic mindset, I want to say, where people are more so, how do I say, they are thinking more about me rather than the group. They're not thinking about the betterment of a society. They're thinking about the betterment of themselves. So I do want to say that. I think we all know that a lot of people are not believing in leadership. That is something that is prevalent, and the survey found that out as well, or confirmed that, I should say, but I think that's clear. There's a sense of sticking to what you know, I say. Like, I think that's the overall feel to this survey. A lack of trust of what's out there. Proximity is what is best, and you know, familiarity breeds comfort. Like, this is the type of energy that is pretty much out there. And I'll say this. There is less push towards wanting to explore and broaden your mind, and people trust formalized institutions less. They're more likely to say, all right, my friend Bob told me this, so I believe it, rather than I went to this institute XIZ, found the information, looked at scholars, looked at people who are expert in the field. It's just going off of blind trust, or just, hey, my friend co-signs it, so it's got to be true. That's the kind of vibe that we are in mentally. And so in a way, it's reflecting that sense of anti-intellectualism in a way, where we have this, in a way you could say, I keep saying in a way, it's a traditional mindset that focuses on, I trust my friends so that they don't lead me astray. Even if your friends don't know anything, it's like the blind leading the blind. But that's sort of the state that we're in, because people don't have that level of trust. Now, in 2006, we are actually living in a system of platform feudalism, if you think about it. where big tech companies act as digital landlords because they own the roads, essentially. So companies like Amazon, Uber, AI, small businesses, and workers are forced to pay 20 to 30% tax just to exist on the platform. For example, guys, and excuse me, I don't know why when I sit here, my nose, it just goes crazy. But for example, guys, like when I do the live tarot readings and everything like that, if you guys go through Super Chat, then YouTube will tax, I think it's even like 40% of that payment. And essentially I'm being taxed to use that platform. So if you spend $10, I might actually only get $6 or something like that. Maybe even just $5.50. It varies depending on, okay, is it an app? Did you pay on an Apple? And did you pay through YouTube on an Apple? It's very much a lot. There's a lot going on there. So I do want to acknowledge that this is part of the, I guess, platform feudalism that exists today. Also, like if you host a business on a website, generally you might have to pay some fee for hosting. Hey, Shifting Lotus, how are you? I'm glad to see you're here. Good evening. I'm just doing the astrology of Saturn in Uttara Bhadrapada, sextiling Uranus in Krittika, and I'm just doing essentially what's happening in 2026, the breakdown of that, and then I'm going to jump into all signs. So I'm glad to see you here, and I hope you're doing well. And sorry guys, I don't know why my nose is itching like this. Like, I don't know if it's allergies. I don't know if I just need to relax and wash my face again or something, whatever the case may be. But essentially, as I was saying before, this mirrors 847 AD, where we trade our independence for safety and convenience of their walls. This shift is why you no longer own your own software or your movies. You simply just rent them through platforms or endless subscriptions, essentially. So it really isn't a choice anymore. It's just about survival necessities, or even survival wants. You know, if you want to be entertained and you want to be up on the latest shows and you want to have conversations with your friends about Stranger Things or Squid Games, you got to join the platforms and you got to pay the subscription. So today I was doing some research. Well, actually last night I was doing some research about platforms like Instacart charging people different prices. Now, I kind of knew a little bit about this before, where I had heard that this is kind of more the new wave now. I knew about this for airlines, that they charge different customers different prices. They generate random prices for different customers. But I had no clue that Instacart did this as well. And essentially, this group went undercover for, I guess, as Instacart shoppers or something like that. And what happened was, while they were using the platform for these people who are shopping, you would get 3 different prices for the same eggs, right? And honestly, 3 out of the 4 products had varying prices. So over 75% of the products had varying prices. So that is disturbing. This was also the same for Uber, where different people or drivers might get different prices for the same route. It didn't really matter. Same time of day, different prices happening all across America. Really messed up. So I will say this, for Instacart specifically, they acquired this site that targets customers based on past behaviors. And they had, at the end of the day, let's say they had a group of 50 people, right? And they sent them out to go shopping. It's the industry doing its thing. Yep, you're not wrong. Like, the greed is out of control. It's really insane. Like, the more you know, the scarier it is. Like, it's unbelievable. I guess because I couldn't imagine doing this to people. Like, what's the point of, like, drawing people out of their money like this? Eventually it will get back to you. There's always a breaking point, but I guess by then they've already made their money, right? But as I was saying, with these platforms, let's say we had 50 people going out to experiment and seeing how much it cost for them for different prices. They gave them, let's say, 10 items to purchase. You have to buy an apple, you have to buy some bread, you have to buy some cereal, right? So one group would end up paying $114, and then another group would end up paying $124, right? And you would have some places that would, or some people being charged like, 50 cents more, $1 more, like all of this stuff going on these platforms. And it really just was unfair that they saw this. And Instacart, I don't know what their response was. I think initially they said, oh, we had nothing to do with this. It's the grocery store prices. And from what I was listening, it sounded like, I'd have to go back and listen, that they reached out to the grocery stores, and the grocery stores, we have said, we have nothing to do that. That's all Instacart and their platform and what they're choosing to charge on it. And that's when Instacart was just like, oh yeah, that is us. Like, is this a sign I should cancel Instacart? Honestly, when I was reading this, I was like, is it a sign too? I think I'll probably just end up using it less, just because I don't know if I'm being charged more than my neighbor. The only way I would know is if I go to my neighbor and I said, hey, like, can I see how much you're being charged at, I don't know, Safeway or Wegmans or Stop and Shop, whatever grocery stores near you, CVS, like how much are you being charged for this? And I'm sure it's going to be uneven. They also said that they found this happening at grocery stores' physical locations, but it's less specific to do with the customers. Like, it's not like, okay, this customer buys eggs and goes up to the checkout and it's $3, and this customer buys eggs and it's $4. It's more so like, okay, if I go to a Safeway here, it's going to be $4. And then if I go to a Safeway that's 5 minutes away, these eggs might be $5. So it depends on the location that you're at that they might charge more. I'm imagining they're probably going to charge more at areas that have a little bit higher income, but they are testing it out in physical stores as well. And that is definitely happening across America immediately. You also have things where, you have the Amazon, I think it's Amazon Fresh, if I'm not mistaken, where they give you the discount on groceries as well if you get a subscription. And in a way, it's kind of like you pay less for groceries through a subscription model. It's so weird to have a subscription model for groceries, but everything is so subscription based now. I think it's almost like being normalized, but it shouldn't be normalized, really. My husband won't allow it, and I appreciate the convenience, to be honest. Well, as long as he's paying, to be honest. He can pay an extra $15, all right? Or $10 or something like that. But I'll say they're definitely testing it now. I don't think they perfected the formula, but I think as they get more data, they're definitely going to charge people different prices. But definitely wild information that I found out there. I didn't know about it. That article had just come out this year, a couple of days ago or something like that. I'm trying to look at my notes here. I think I talked about that. Skipping on to this. I'll say this. So what we might expect happening now that we have this transit here is that what we might start to see is, number one, we might have this shifted mindset towards more traditional and rejection of education, scholarly thought, logic. That's probably not going to be promoted as much, open learning. And people are probably going to, I don't know if they'll suppress new ideas. They might. I feel like that might on some level be happening, but I'm talking about the average person. But more than likely, people are not going to be as open to new information if it doesn't already meet their narrative and their mind, which is already a thing. But it's likely to happen more and more just based upon the past and the anti-intellectual movement. And then based upon what was happening in Europe with the fragmentation and the reactive behaviors, you might see a lot more instability, bickering. I will say this, there may be a united when it comes to external threats, but ultimately you'll see likely people are giving a little bit more of their freedoms to feel some sense of security, even if it's a big sacrifice. And then based off of the Ghana Empire, in some regions, you are likely to see people actually blossoming during this time period, where they are more open to new ideas, more open to new people. And because of that, they'll expand and likely have greater access to freedoms and a better quality of life. So that is what I wanted to talk about there. So I'm going to pause there really quick. And I'm going to get my glass of water, guys. It shouldn't take more than a second. I don't know where I put it. I thought I brought it upstairs with me. I was being responsible. And it's like, I'm going to have my water ready this time. I did not have my water ready. So let me be right back. I'll be back in like a second. And thanks for joining me, Shifting Lotus. And if any of you guys are joining me now, I am talking about the astrology transit of Uranus and Krittika, sextiling Saturn in Uttara Bhadrapada. This is the first time this has happened in over 1,000 years. And I'm talking about the exact sextile and aspect. Previous videos, I did talk about Saturn being in Pisces and Uranus being in Taurus, or I think in the video I said Gemini because I was talking about it from a more Western perspective. I will say moving forward, I'm probably just going to do things from a Vedic perspective to make it easy for everyone. And that was more so just on a sign level. But when I started looking on the nakshatra level, I actually found that it's pretty rare for Uranus to be in Krittika and for Saturn to be in Uttara Bhadrapada and for them to sextile. The fact that this has happened for the first time in over 1,000 years is really astronomical, no pun intended. I don't know why I'm making these strokes, but it's stunning to just know that this is extremely rare transit that is happening in our sky, and that likely, your children or children's children or whoever, they'll never experience it. People probably will not experience this for another 1,000 years. So that's what I wanted to say there. And I'm going to go ahead and get that glass of water, and I'll be right back, and I will get into your signs. Oh, and I'm going to figure out why my nose is itchy. It's got to be allergies. All right. I'm back, and we're going to go straight into the sign placements. I hope you guys like my little bar on the side. I might change the colors or the font a little bit, but I think I like it so far. Give me your feedback and let me know what you think. All right, Aries, let's get into this. So Aries, this is happening in your 2nd house and your 12th house. If you are in this headspace where you are open to new opportunities outside of your normal ways of making money, you actually might find new ways to expand your network. However, if you let fear or lack of trust guide you, you might feel forced to hide your values or feel like your voice isn't being heard, and you might miss out on new opportunities to acquire resources or the things that you might possibly want. I'll say this, when I see the 2nd house, it is, at least in my opinion, more to do with how you structure and save your money or invest your money rather than always having this financial boost. But it's not necessarily impossible, because lots of people have plenty of financial opportunities when they have things going through the... Oh, I'm glad you like it, Shifting Lotus. Plenty of people have opportunities when they have planets going through their second house. So Uranus could just bring about really some spontaneous stuff you never even thought about. But examples of this could be, you might be pivoting in your career to a completely new industry, like, tech, AI, where things are, salaries a lot higher or something like that. You might feel like, okay, I'm going to set up some automated savings or investings. You know how they have those, what is it called? Acorn, right? Where you put in some money and then it carries your leftover change and invests it. That's something like that. Or you might invest in a different asset class that you've never done before. So a different asset class, it's like, you know what? I think I'm going to get into real estate and try to buy some houses or something. If you got money like that, I suggest you do it. Go ahead. But you want to invest in something that's going to bring you value, right? You're like, okay, well, maybe I want to open up a Roth IRA. I have a 401k, but I want to take advantage of the tax-free situation with the Roth IRA, right? So that might be something that you do when it comes to this energy and this transit in the sky. We also have this feeling of like, possibly for some of you who are feeling more so of the insecurity part of this nature in the sky, this feeling of lack of safety and feeling as though you might have to give up things or suppress things. You might just want to like have this business idea, but you decide, oh, I'm just going to keep this as a side hustle, and I might keep it hidden away from everyone because I'm not sure how they'll react. And, I don't trust them to support me, and they might bring me down, things like that. And then sometimes this can represent that you're clinging to a lifestyle that isn't right for you anymore. Whether that's like, okay, I'm spending too much on trying to keep up with the Joneses, or even something along the lines of, how do I say this? You are spending your money on things that you might have emotional attachment to. And then for some cases, it could be addiction, right? Because the second house rules things you put into your mouth. So anything having to do with smoking, drinking, eating, pills, I don't know, but anything you put in your mouth, and maybe you're doing too much of that, or you're doing it at all. It may not be. It might be something that you consider or have to address at this time, just given the energies of this transit going on here. Now, let's move on to Taurus. Yes, money for the Aries. That's definitely a possibility for you guys coming in. Now, Taurus, this is happening in your first house and your 11th house. Now, this is actually really good too, at least in my opinion, because it can bring like this total transformation of your life. Don't get me wrong. Transformations are tough, and I've already even seen it with a lot of different Tauruses. So this transformation represents a major transformation of your status. Keep in mind, the first house connects to kind of like all the houses. So whenever you have a transit to the first house, pretty much it's like all your houses being lit up, because it's you, and it's you, your body, your mind, and how you move through the world. And so whatever you do, it's like you're going through a huge transformation in your life. And so it's affecting your finances, it's affecting your reputation, it's affecting your friendships, it's affecting your marriage, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever. It's just affecting everything. So what could be happening during this time period is that you might have to adjust to some new circumstances. And if you are not living in a healthy manner, you're probably going to have to find a new way of healthy living, or it might be very detrimental to you at this time. I'll say this, if you fight to stay in place, because I know you Tauruses don't like all that transformation and change, you're going to be in this place of distress. It's really going to be tough for you. And that decision to remain stagnant is going to cause some suffering, right? You're going to have to make some trades or some deals that you don't want to make, kind of like when it came to feudalism back in Europe. And when I look at this transit, there are going to be some new norms that you are likely having to get used to. You might find yourself in a place where you want to isolate, or you want to pull away from people because you feel like you're going through something and people don't understand you, or you just need time to yourself to figure things out. And you just may not be able to trust in that type of environment. To keep in mind how I just talked about in 2026, a lot of people are feeling a lot of mistrust towards other people. And when we talk about this happening specifically in your first house, Taurus, your first and 11th house, this can definitely bring about having a mistrust for others as well. And while it may be tempting to stay in this place of being familiar because you don't know what other people are thinking or who you can rely on or who you can embrace, it is better to try to connect with others. Or, you might miss an opportunity to embrace a new friend who might surprise you. I do want to say that. I actually saw some Tauruses going through things in their life having to do with statuses, like they would be going through a divorce. They would be getting married. They're moving on from being single or to a relationship. I've even seen Tauruses they in relationships with their therapist or long-term therapist. I'm not saying I had a therapist for a week and I ended it. They might have had a therapist for years and it's oh wait, I no longer have that therapist and they've been in my life for 10 years. That can happen as well. And that can also feel like a divorce. You also have people becoming parents for the first time, second time, third time, they have another kid. I've seen some Tauruses go through that in their life, and it just feels like a lot to manage. We have things like graduating or getting some sort of certification, moving out of your current home. These are all things that I have seen. There's a lot of big life events going on with Taurus, that and Pisces, but you guys are last, so we're gonna get to you last. This can also be, fighting to stay where you are. Like I said, if you fight to stay where you are, or you try to apply the way that you were currently living to how you're living now, and with all the changes happening, it's going to be tough for you because this transit is wanting you to change. It wants you to move. And there's likely going to be some external circumstances that are going to be pushing you to shift. One positive thing, though, that I've seen is that you might actually be improving your physical health. Because as we saw with the Ghanaian Empire, you had a lot more trade, you had a lot more salt being available. And so if you have a lot of salt in your food and it's not being spoiled anymore, well, yeah, that's obviously a very good thing for you. And so there may be some improvements to your life that can be beneficial for your health that are happening. Maybe you move closer to a gym. Maybe you move to a walkable city. Maybe you get a raise and then all of a sudden you're you know what? I can afford to shop at an organic grocery store. And so I'm going to spend my money on that. Whatever the case may be, this is I'm getting opportunities for health improvement. Now, Gemini, this is happening in your 12th and your 10th house. So for Gemini, this involves a period of contemplation, as this is the 12th house energy. It's a period of obviously, your reputation, your goals, your careers, la, 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 right? We already know it's all of that. Just be in mind, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot at this time, just because sometimes when we talk about the 10th house and the things that are going on there, some of my nose is itchy, and we have this Saturn and Uttara Bhadrapada feel to it. It can also feel I don't want to take a chance and I don't want to take a risk career-wise because I don't think that there are better opportunities out there for me, or I don't want to end up homeless or something like that and lose my job and lose my income or something. So I just want to say, be mindful if you have any sort of fears on that side. But I will say this, there is likely this energy that you want to tap more into your spiritual side to you. If you have any underlying, psychological issues that you would like to address, now would probably be the time, especially if it's issues having to do with security or self-worth, right? If you feel like you are devaluing yourself in any way, or if you're making unnecessary sacrifices for people around you, this is the time that you might want to just sit back and reflect and say, why am I doing this? Does this still make sense for me? I definitely can see that this might come to a tower moment breaking point for you, just because this can be a very tense transit, at least from what we've seen from the history with the attacks from the Vikings and all that jazz. You might feel like, wow, people are really demanding a lot from me, and it's leaving me exhausted, especially since this is happening in your 10th and 12th house. It might even feel like this is from work that is happening or that's the reason that this is happening. Or even your goals, your own personal goals. You know, sometimes we feel this level of ambition and we put pressure on ourselves, especially since it's in Saturn Uttara Bhadrapada. Saturn Uttara Bhadrapada is internal pressure, right? It's the pressure you put on yourself, the standards that you lay for yourself. It has nothing to do with other people. It's like very much, I'm my own worst enemy, etc. Also, I'm my own hero, right? So very, very much like, I don't care what people say about me. It's all about what I want to do and how I express myself. Sorry guys, is my computer, I think it's freezing or something. I don't know what's going on. What in the world is happening? All right, unfrozen again. All right. Sorry, I gotta get my notes together. I wrote a little thing for every sign so I don't forget anything, because I actually do look at people and see what's going on in their lives. All right, so generally, when we talk about this transit, involves themes of trust, like all of them will, and who you allow yourself to be vulnerable with, especially when we're talking about the 12th house and your secrets and all of the things that have to do with what's going on in your mental world. And you're like, do I want to share these deepest parts of myself with someone? This feels scary, you know, and I don't know if I want to do that. Also, because you might have that mindset of not wanting to open up, or maybe you do want to open up. Like I said, it depends on where you are emotionally. You might be contemplating, like, how do you want to share your goals with? You know how they say, like, people move in silence when it comes to your goals. This is kind of that energy too, where you're like, maybe I should move in silence when it comes to my goals. But I think what I've seen from this transit, it does seem to be better to open up and to be more vocal about your desires and your dreams. I'm not saying you have to tell everyone. You just might have to practice a little bit more discernment here and finding the right person to really express your thoughts, your deepest thoughts with, about the things that you would like to accomplish, the things that you would like to do in life. This actually could be a really great time for that, because you'll feel very emotionally supported having someone there to make you feel a little bit less alone. Good things that could be happening is that, you know, you could be completing a certificate or degree that officially changes your professional status. You're like, oh, I got my MBA, boom, like change of status going on there. You might be working on some private project, like I said before, when it comes to like, ooh, I'm working on this in silence, and then I'm going to release it. Like for me, I'll use an example. Let's say you are a tarot reader and you're like, all right, I'm going to create a deck and I'm not going to tell anyone about it. I'm just going to release it like Beyonce and just drop an album or something like that. That might be something there. You might open up to a mentor or boss. And this is what I was talking about. You don't have to open up to everyone, but you might find one particular person that you want to open up with about your career goals and how you want to move and grow in the future. And you might actually find that they open up a pathway to advancement for you because you chose to open up about these things. Another thing that this can happen is, like, let's say you discover a new talent, or even like you're in the process of refining a talent. You might feel like, oh, you know, I don't know if I want to share that with everyone just yet. This is just something just for me. And so you keep your talents hidden away from the world because you don't trust how other people will respond to it. So I do want to say that this can also, as I mentioned before, be a little bit more self-sabotaging when it comes to any potential bad habits. 12th house is the house of self-sabotage, the ways in which we shoot ourselves in the foot, the ways in which we we look back and we say, why did I do that? Like, that's the 12th house energy here. And so when we're talking about this can feel as though you are a little overly self-conscious, kind of how I was saying before, where there was a lot of self-censorship going on. this can be that as well. The 12th house can be very, very quiet. And when we're looking at you here, Gemini, it may feel as though maybe I shouldn't open up about that thought, or maybe I want to keep that thing to myself. And this feels a little bit embarrassing. So I'm only going to share this with one other person. I can't tell people about this thing. I don't know. It depends on what it is. I'm not going to say that you won't get backlash, because we're in a day and age where people are very judgmental, you know, me included. I'm not going to lie. I'm a judgmental person like everyone else. So I can't tell you what to do, but you might find yourself thinking these thoughts a little bit more. But I do want to say you might feel sometimes a little unheard in the worst case scenario when it comes to higher ups. You might feel like, all right, they're implementing new rules. I don't think I agree with these rules. It doesn't really make sense. Another thing is you might find that you are giving away your autonomy to an employer, a job that doesn't fully value your input and doesn't really care to see you grow and developed. Same way that people kind of gave away their land for security just to feel safe. All right, moving on to Cancer. So for Cancer, this transit is moving through your 11th and your 9th house, social networks and travel, higher learning, all of that jazz. So this actually could be a time in which you decide to educate yourself and even expand your network. I will say education happens outside of the classroom. You have people who might take an astrology course. So you might go a more traditional institutional route. You know, I don't know. It's hard with this because when we look at the transits, there was this feeling of not wanting to have a culture of intellectualism. And so this is what makes me think that you might be wanting to go outside the classroom when it comes to how you educating yourself. You're like, all right, well, I don't want to go back to school, so maybe I'll get my library card, or I'll listen to a podcast, or I'll watch a YouTube video and I'll gain information and knowledge that way. And that's the way you choose to expand your mind. I will say this, you could be even looking at like specifically, how can I expand my mind in the direction of making more money, just because the 11th house represents gains from work. And so you might be looking at other people's career trajectories and saying, all right, I want to do what they do. I want to figure out how to do it. And I am just going to copy that book and do that. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. But whatever the case may it be, you are trying to educate yourself on the ways that you can make your dreams come true. That will be true for all Cancers. You may receive some sort of pushback when it comes to your belief system, especially when it comes to friends or even just networks. So 11th house can be your social media. So if you post some opinion piece on social media, well, this looks like you getting pushback from an audience, more so than support. Hey, Miss Lola Taylor, how are you? I haven't seen you. Hope you're doing good. But as I was saying, it's definitely a good time for wanting to open up and find people who might have different outlooks than you, even if you initially receive some pushback throughout, or even throughout this transit, if you receive pushback. Don't get into the space where you feel too fearful or uncomfortable sharing your beliefs. You actually may find people who are like-minded, even if you get that, I don't know, I guess I'll just say pushback again. I hate repeating words, but you know, I'm not Shakespeare, so I gotta use the same words. Also, you know, because you might be communicating with more people, you might find that certain people have things that you need in terms of wisdom or knowledge, and they can give you some tangible opportunities. Sometimes we have our own system set in place where we think it's only good to trust certain sources, but now might be the time to consider new outlets or institutions, though you should always do your own research when it comes to the information that you are consuming. So I just want you to know that what this transit looks like is educating yourself through new channels. As I previously mentioned, you are someone who is likely going to want to establish a presence when it comes to some sort of social network you have. I can't say always social media because it's not always that, but it is likely that you will want to expand your network in some sort of area that you've always been curious about, that you've always wanted to expand your mind in, that you've always wanted to know about. For example, I just saw a Cancer, native talk about how they've always kind of wanted to know how people got into certain jobs. And so they might just start asking people how they got into certain jobs, like how'd you get into taxidermy, things like that. Who knows? How'd you get into fixing printers, whatever the case. So it doesn't have to be something that is always like, oh, I got my PhD. Sometimes it's just like, hey, you know what? I've been talking to people about what they do for a living and how they came across their career trajectory. And I've just been very, very curious about it. So there is that. But whatever the case may be, this is definitely an opportunity to grow your network and net worth, just looking at the combination here. So for Leo, this transit is happening in your career house and public reputation, along with your house of shared resources and deep intimacy, the 10th and the 8th house, right? So you may find that your career trajectory is tied to how well you manage your assets or how well you manage others' assets, your debts, other people's debts, and how well you invest with others, including how well you invest your time, your energy, your partnerships and connections. So because this is an 8th house of intimacy, it also represents close partnerships and how well you respect other people's values. So that could be the name of the game here, I want to say, because there is this push towards normalcy, back to tradition, especially at the time of the 847 in the Arab regions, particularly Baghdad. It may feel as though that the people who you are intimate with or sharing intimate moments with can be a part of your reputation. Sometimes we get into this headspace where everyone's in this mindset of hookup culture. But because we have this sort of push towards a little bit more traditionalism, things like close and intimate relationships might be looked at more microscopically and may not be treated as lightly. So who you associate with and who you have partnerships with may affect that reputation a lot for you, Leos. Now, with Uranus in the 10th house, it definitely brings about potential relationships which people might find controversial, like an age gap relationship or something along the lines of that, different culture, whatever the case may be. And depending on your openness and tolerance, this can be this lighthouse moment for you. It's a brilliant opportunity for emotional and or financial growth. On the other hand, you may feel someone else's values are independent on your reputation. You could work for a system or with someone who has the total opposite values to you. And that can affect your reputation in some way. Maybe they're just like, oh, I don't like how this person thinks, blah, blah, blah. They start talking trash, right? Conversely, you can end up working with someone who actually has very similar values to you, and they feel like you fit the culture of the work environment. And then they're like, all right, well, I'm going to support your rise because I think we're very similar. So that can be happening for you, Leo, as well. This can also just represent having more structure when it comes to investments, and more so a defensive structure. So if you were making investments, this would be a traditional structure of like, I'm going to invest in index funds and I'm going to invest in bonds, right? Like you're like, I'm not going to go ahead and buy individual stocks in tech. That's not generally what this vibe is going to be like when it comes to this. So this can look like stepping into a higher role that aligns with essentially who you are and the company's culture, and, you're boosting public standing. And then we have this open-closed partnership type vibe, a joint venture that provides emotional and financial support and helps you reach your career goals. And you could just meet someone romantically that does that. I've seen the eighth house connect to situationships as well. I know we talk about it in terms of intimacy when it comes to long-term partnerships, but I've seen people who go through like these eighth house transits and they have a situationship that affects their life in some way. And so this could look like somebody who you're not technically with, kind of giving you advice that could potentially boost your career. So I just want to throw that out there as well. You might also be embracing unique or non-traditional relationships. Not going to say that's going to go over well or not. You know, I'm not going to, it's going to depend on your environment. And they may push you into a new social or professional status. There's also like this feeling of, okay, my relationship is at risk because of my private life. We also have that image of like, you don't align with the traditional image of what we expect in this career, and maybe you have to transform. Sorry guys, I have no clue, my nose is itching. Some people might refuse to collaborate with you financially. Sometimes this is like, I don't want to give you a loan because I feel like you are at risk customer, or we're going to go with someone who's going to be low tolerance, low risk. And I think that's the feel now. People still don't want to take these risky bets when it comes to applying loans. And so I don't think that's surprising. And you might have to go back and figure out, okay, how am I going to get this loan for whatever house or whatever you need a loan for, a car loan. That could be going on as well. Hopefully this is not missing out on career opportunities. But sometimes you can be in this place where you're having a lot of fear, like I was talking about with the previous transits, and people sort of suppressing their desires. And maybe this 10th house energy is just like, oh, wow, like I really want to go for this promotion, but I don't know, because I feel like people will think that I'm in competition with X, Y, and Z, and it creates a real awkward environment. And I don't know what to do when it comes to this, and I'm gonna have to figure out if I want to go for this and risk my reputation in some way. And then lastly, I want to say with this transit, it kind of creates a change in appearance. So like if you have always had long hair, you just decide to cut your hair, and people are like, oh, you know, I wasn't expecting that for you. It is the 8th house that does represent transformation, including your looks. So. And the 10th house represents your image and how you're seen out there in the world. I'm just drinking water, guys. I'm thirsty. I'm really thirsty from talking. All right, Virgo, we're on to you. This is in your 9th and your 7th house. So this goes through your house of higher learning and belief systems, along with your house of one-on-one partnerships and the public. So this is all about your personal philosophy, your legal, intimate connections or commitments, I should say, and how they interact with one another. Generally, one of the themes here involves trust, knowing how to maintain your own belief system while allowing, while allowing room for a partner's views. So there is this feeling of trust and opening up and vulnerability that can go beyond close partners. One-on-one, you may be sharing more intimate moments with the public and those around you. So you might open up and make an announcement about something that's going on in your life via social media, or even just like with a coworker. You're just saying, hey, I'm going through this rough time at home, blah, 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 blah. And maybe you don't typically open up like that with coworkers, but you might find yourself doing that at this time. At the same time, this can feel like the opposite for some people, where they feel like they don't have a space to show who they are. You know, they feel like people aren't going to treat them right. They're going to bully them if they say what's on their mind and what they truly believe and what opinions they hold. And it might scare people away, or it might make people uncomfortable, or people might judge them or not like them as much. That's something that could be on, you know, your mind, Virgos, as well. I will say this, it just reminds me of like how the lords, you know, leaned on people, or the people leaned on lords for protection during the Viking era. You may find yourself like relying on others, like professionals, doctors, lawyers, co-workers, family, to sort of take care of you. You know, you're looking at these intimate partnerships and it's like, who can take care of me? Who can help me out? Not saying that you're not giving up something in return, but you know, you might be looking at people like that and they might be looking at you like that. It could be this vice versa situation going on here. And anyway, it can also bring a renewed sense of hope that you might get just from somebody having a different mindset to you. This can also look like, you know, you are handing over a difficult personal or legal matter to a professional, which involves, you know, okay, I finally got some mental relief now that I've gotten a lawyer to help me through my divorce, right? Or help me in, I don't know, small claims court, or I have no clue. You could also say, all right, I'm going to letting a family member or a close connection take the lead on a shared responsibility. You know, maybe you're the one with a partner and you're always taking care of the dog and you're just like, you know what? It's your time. You got to take care of the dog. I'm always taking the dog for a walk. You got to take care of the dog this time. So there's something like that. Very simple, but it is something that could be done. At the other hand, you actually could be refusing to seek help from doctors and experts because you're like, you know what? I don't really trust them. And I feel like this is me being in a position that's too vulnerable and I'm scared. And I'd rather stick to what I know or just remain in ignorance of what could be going on with me. This can also represent like you're clamming up during professional evaluations because you don't feel like the environment is safe enough to actually open up. Psychological safety is a thing. And so maybe you're like, oh, I'm not in an environment that is psychologically safe. And you might start to question your career environment. Libra, this is happening in your 8th and your 6th house. So for Libra, this transit impacts your house of shared resources and intimacy along with the house of daily work and health. You may be given an opportunity to work on a project or an assignment, and it may come with some stipulations that you're like, oh, I'm not a fan of this. However, it could also be the direct opposite, where you find yourself aligning with companies, brands, or even people who you feel like you share an intimate story with. You might also feel like you want to open up about who you are as a person and find that, okay, people appreciate this within the work environment, you know. Instead of being like, all right, let's do things about work. You're like, all right, I'm going to open up more a little about my childhood or my family. And people are like, they like these stories from you, you know, and they're like, I can relate. I've been through this X, Y, and Z. This can also feel as though this is where you might see something like a check clear that you have been waiting on, settlement, any sort of government relief or funding. What else that could be happening here? Man, I don't know why my nose is stuffed. I got to take some allergy medicine because my nose is itching and now it's stuffed. All right. Sorry, guys. This is also a time where you, like I said, you might see that check clear, We also have this emphasis on sort of like golden age or expansion of trade like we did in Ghana. And so you might see some financial opportunities because this is happening in your 8th and 6th house. And I know these are known as like the malefic houses and whatever like that, but they are actually really great financial houses that you'll see. And so I really do feel like this can feel like this heyday moment or celebratory moment when it comes to financial opportunities. And I definitely seen some changes in structure when it comes to your routine, possibly feeling like you need to be more strategic about how you move in your daily environment, even within a work environment. You're just like, I need more order here. I need more structure here. I need something here that's just going to feel a little bit more right for me to create a little structured flow for yourself, whatever the case may be. What this can be looking like, what this looks like, is landing a brand deal or a job that celebrates your vulnerability. You know, they like the personal story. They're like, that's why we hired you. You're a personality hire. We love you. This also can look like, you know, you finally get this long awaited check. This can also be like inheritance as well. Like you inherit something and you're like, oh, okay, I can invest this and upgrade my life. And that's really cool. This can also be the house of just, you know, shared resources as well. You get married, you combine your finances, or your spouse, they retire, they start getting bigger checks or different checks. Sometimes it happens that you get your retirement and then you get paid on top of that. depending on the type of job you work, and you're like, okay, I'm benefiting from my spouse. This can also look like you're turning down much needed funding or a loan because you're like, you know what, I don't like these stipulations, like let's say you are a mid-sized business. Remember how I was talking about private equity and how they have those extreme interest rates? Well, you might look at that and say, oh, I needed this loan for my business, but a 15% interest rate, I think not, right? Also, this can look like you are refusing to share more intimate parts of yourself, which may cause you to miss out on some moments in your life, whether that's romantically or within a work environment. It depends. Some work environments are very nosy. And this can also, like I said, you're hiding your true self to remain more professional, even if being vulnerable might help you make some more connections. So that could also be the thing. Moving along, we're on Scorpio. Oh, we're more than halfway through, guys. So Scorpio, this is happening in your 7th and 5th house. So this transit moves through your houses of one-on-one partnerships and the public, along with your house of creativity, romance, children, self-expression. You'll definitely be encountering people who introduce you to new thoughts, new ideas. And depending on your perspective, you can be open to the information. You can be open to the feedback. It just depends on what they're saying. I will say, at this time, who knows if it makes sense or it may not make sense. I will say, maybe if they hit you with some truth or logic, it could be hurtful. It's hard to know. Information, when I see this transit coming through, there was such extreme reactions to it. So we know that the reaction is probably not going to be mild with whatever people are saying to you in these one-on-one discussions that you might be happening. So I want to say that. You might find it tricky to navigate certain conversations with people, and that kind of plays a role into that, especially when it comes to belief systems. You might feel like, all right, these conversations are best reserved for private times or private areas in life, and you're like, let's pull away from the crowd and I'll loop back in with you after the meeting type of energy is going on here. And you may even feel like when you do share personal aspects of your life, you might sense a little bit of judgment from others, especially if your life experiences don't match the expected traditional outlook, right? For example, you might be a woman who is proposing to a man, and then you tell people, oh my goodness, I proposed to a man. And then people look at you like, girl. And that's the kind of thing. You didn't technically do anything wrong, right? But you have a different outlook. And so this is why I say that you might have some actions that you mention in conversations with people to the public, and they're just like, oh, that can happen. That can happen during this period with this push of traditionalism going on. You might also find yourself breaking away from certain type of partnerships, or you're resetting the tone of your personal relationships. This is a great time for foreign travel and for expanding any businesses that you might have, moving overseas. All of that can have to do and connect with the 7th house. You might even find yourself looking for jobs in those areas. You're like, okay, I want to get a job in China. Boom. You're looking for a job in China and you got one. So you can definitely see that there is also some changes in how you structure your routine here. I know it's the 7th house, not the 6th house, but when you start to talk to people and change your life and travel, your routine changes a little bit. I'll say that, right? I do want to talk about how the fact that this can also bring about some romance, but really, when we're talking about the romance, there is a seriousness to it. Saturn going through this placement is going to, if you're a woman, you might date older, more than likely. Sometimes it gives an age gap, but in Uttara Bhadrapada, I'll say this, it generally wants to give it wants that traditional structure. It wants that regular, guy, 2 years older, woman, 2 years younger type of vibe to it. When it comes to relationships, that's just the way Saturn is, unless it just makes sense to not do things that way, because Saturn does love efficiency. And so that could be going on. And even if you don't find yourself dating within that traditional space, you still might be attracting partners who are very mature or at least very serious. You know, Scorpio, like you'll find people who might be more so marriage minded or even long-term partnership minded, just based upon the nature of this planet of Saturn being in your 5th house here. So I did want to throw that in there. And then also, if you're in a creative mindset, this can bring about more structure into that environment. For example, if you know me, guys, I always let you know that I film ahead and I have a very structured plan. I treat this channel like a project, and I have lists of tasks, acceptance criteria for videos, etc. I'm very formatted. I'm very Saturnian with it. But I have met people who are more like, I just post how I feel, and I may not have a regular schedule, and sometimes I post 3 times a week and blah, 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 right? Which I have no issue with. If I could do that, I would love to do that, but if I started doing that, guys, you'd never see me. So with Saturn going into the 5th house, you might start being, I guess, more like me, more structured, more, I'm going to be here in this time. I'm going to come up on this day. This is the things we talk about here. Like, this is how I format things. This is this is my color scheme. This is my logo. This da-da-da. Very structured in your creative outlook or output. And, I'll leave it at that when it comes to that. But this is more than likely you even getting creative inspiration from other people, the same way that during the Ghana Golden Empire with this I guess it's not continental, trans-country trade, gold trade going on, how they got ideas and new tools and different cultural mixtures. So that could be going on for you creatively, where you're just getting like creative ideas from other people. Other examples that we have here, international contacts, overseas companies, they want you for this new role. They're like, okay, come into our new market, join our local market for things. Also resetting boundaries in relationships so that you have more freedom and you're like, you can't control me. I'm gonna do what I want to do. Or even just recognizes places within your relationship where you feel like, I don't know if I can be totally safe with this person. Another thing that can happen is you might choose you might choose a non-traditional partner, but I will say this, that will come with a little bit of pushback here and possible judgment, just based upon the history of these transits and how things have been affecting people so far. You might feel like you want to keep any unconventional beliefs about relationships to yourself, just because of things going on right now. And then there could be this feeling, like I said, of lack of trust in certain relationships. It may not even be romantic, but you might be like, I don't really trust my manager. Like, I work with them every day. I just don't feel like this is somebody who I can really trust, and you want to break away from that environment. Another thing is, like, you might refuse global opportunities because you're like, I don't know anyone who does that. I don't know anyone who just travels and goes overseas and steps outside of their local norms. And I've always wanted to live here. My family's here, And you get into this mindset of like, you're not wanting to grow, and therefore you miss out on opportunities that can bring you abroad, or not even just abroad. I live on the east side of the country. Maybe, I get an opportunity on the west side of the country, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know. My family's here, all my friends are here. I'm comfortable here, blah, blah, blah. And I reject that opportunity. And so something like that could happen, but it will come at a cost. So Sagittarius, let's get into you lucky Sagittarius. We have the 6th house and the 4th house going on here. So for Sagittarius, this transit moves through your house of daily work and health, along with your house of home and roots. All right. So this is a time to transform your everyday routine, your work, the grind, all of that, even your home environment. So you might be looking to move. You might be looking to transform your home. You might be looking to, get your house on the deed of another home. Maybe your parents buy a home and they're like, hey, I'll put you on the deed or whatever, something like that. Or your husband or your wife. I don't know if your husband bought you a new home. I'm sure you'd probably be on the deed, but you know what I mean? Like, your grandparents are just like, they pass away, you inherit a home. This can all that can happen, right? So if you choose a more transformative route by being open to new habits and coping mechanisms and journaling and writing and investing your time into things that you haven't done before, you actually may find this transit to be highly beneficial. You'll definitely have to challenge yourself with that because changing your routine can be pretty hard, okay? And focusing on your health is definitely going to be beautiful and surprising at this time, meaning you'll get some surprising results for yourself that you might be like, wow, I didn't know I could look like this. I didn't know my skin could be so shiny and clear. You know, I didn't know that I could be so moisturized. This is the thing that could be going on here. And also with the sixth house, you know, obviously that is similar to the things that you eat because it's your daily routine. And so definitely with Uranus and Taurus there, you're going to be switching that out whether you want to or not. You know, I can give an example like, you know, as you get older, or, you know, I could say this, as I get older, there's certain things I cannot eat or they will upset my stomach. And so maybe things like that are happening right now where you're just like, dang, every time I eat fried chicken, my stomach just turns. It starts bubbling and doubling and I can't do it. So then you find yourself changing your eating habits. And if you are a stubborn Sagittarius and you're like, I'm not doing that, I love fried chicken, I'm gonna keep eating it, you might find yourself regretting that decision. But if you make the change, this could actually be a really good opportunity for you to find what foods actually sit right with your body. And like I said, you actually might be very, very surprised with the results and really like them. Other thing I want to say is, you know, like the peasants who relied on the lords for security against the Vikings, you might find yourself relying on family and people within your personal life for emotional or financial support. I just want to say that. And the reason I say financial support is because the sixth house represents finances and also represents debt. And if we think about these two planets like sextiling each other from these houses, it's like, okay, I have a financial debt to someone, right? Or I have an emotional debt to someone. And so it could be vice versa. Like you could find yourself supporting a family member or they can be supporting you emotionally, materially, and that can happen as well. And then I gave that example of how that worked with feudalism and the Vikings and the peasants and all of that jazz, whatever. So you might find that happening and you might feel the need to make sacrifices to maintain relationships or a lifestyle that you don't feel comfortable with, or maybe a lifestyle you really, really want and you're like, I just got to change. And this could just be breaking habits or even forming new habits or even being consistent about habits. Like for me, I need to be consistent about my skincare routine. So that would be something that would be good if I had this transit going on. Additionally, we have, you may have some eccentric beliefs that don't align with a traditional work environment. And you may, how do I say this? Recognize there may be some backlash on your work choices or where you even choose to live. You might find some pushback on that. Who knows, you know? But whatever the case may be, you might even also be keeping some plans to yourself when it comes to work or home or anything having to do with your emotional world. You don't want to do that. You know, this fourth house is definitely places where you're just like, what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your heart, going on in your spirit. Open up about it. You never know what could surprise you. And honestly, even if people have a bad reaction to it, move away from those people. Now you know they're no good for you and you got them out your life. So what this can actually look like is, you know, you commit yourself to some daily practice, like journaling, or some unique health regimen that shifts your entire life, or just even, who knows, like maybe I get a new hair routine and then my hair starts growing and it's like magical. That would be something that could happen with this transit. This can also be that, you know, you're accepting help from family members, like I said, developing a private side career or a career that aligns with something that you truly value, and you might keep it hidden. You might be open about it. Depends. Sometimes we're not always open about our side hustles and everything. I know with astrology and tarot, I didn't used to be as open. Now I don't care as much because I love it. I know who I am. I know who I am. I'm a little quirky, maybe a little crazy, but I love who I am. So we have fighting against any necessary change in your work routine that could be going on as well, which leads to a feeling of heaviness or burnout. And sometimes this is breaking away from that routine so that you don't have heaviness and burnout. This is why I say it's different for everyone. And we have free will, but the cards are like, this is what's being highlighted. So you can go left, you can go right. You know what I mean? You may also feel like, okay, I'm forced to give up my autonomy to be at home and take care of kids. Or I'm supposed to give up my autonomy because I've got to go work and make a living, and this sucks, but I need to survive. And that can happen as well. As I mentioned, you can find yourself having a little backlash in environment because, you know, you're a Sagittarius. You guys are like the big thinkers here. And so you may have you don't like anti-intellectualism. You're like, this is ridiculous. Like, I want to be able to speak freely and have debates and discussions and all of that jazz. And for you, you might throw some opinions out there in the work environment, or thoughts out there, or truth out there in the work environment that might receive some pushback, guys. So another thing that's really good about this transit that I've seen is that you may have some really interesting ideas and ways in which you go about work. Remember I was talking about earlier how I think it was for Cancers that you might be asking people how they got their job. Well, Sagittarius, you guys might end up being one of those people who actually end up getting some sort of oddball job at this time, right? Because you have Uranus in Taurus, and it's in the sign of Krittika. It's aspecting Uttara Bhadrapada in the 4th house, the house of foundations. And so this might actually be a time where you're building this strong career foundation for yourself that's a bit unusual and off the beaten path, and you do your own thing, and you're really quirky, you know, like it's like, how'd you end up in this job? Like, I don't understand. Why do you paint elephants for a living? Like, it's like you guys might end up in some kind of place like that. So you might be doing something at this time that is leading you down the path to securing a job like that, or maybe you're already doing that and it's expanding and it's growing. So I want you to know that. But yeah, for sure, you can feel some conflict at this time as well. Anyone who's having the 6th house highlighted is going to be in some weird conflicts. I'm not gonna lie. You're gonna be in some weird conflicts, and it's not gonna make sense. They're not gonna come at you with logic. They're not gonna come at you with anything that makes any sense, because remember, we were looking back at all of the things in history and there was no real logic to it. It was just like, you just gotta follow the rules and this is how things are. And then if you push back and say, I don't think that makes sense, you know, you're probably gonna get more of an emotional reaction at this time. So I do want to throw that out there for you guys. But either way, you're looking at new ways to build stability for yourself, and you're trying to do that through financial means, maybe even through real estate, whatever the case may be. You might even be looking to buy a home or take out a home loan. Definitely think that will happen for you. You'll have a lot of luck in that area, especially if you're taking this big risk and big chance. Capricorn. I love saying Capricorn. Capricorn, 5th, 3rd house. This is where this is happening for you. This transit is moving through this house of creativity, romance, self-expression, and along with your house of communication and local community, right? I feel like at this time, if you own your own business, this would be a great time for expansion and growth and opening yourself up to new markets. This is very, very, very good, stable, like energy going on here. So I say it's stable because it's getting that aspect from Uttara Bhadrapada. And so this actually, even though Uranus is very much like, I don't want to sit still, I don't want to grow, like stay in one place, I want things to be sporadic and do this and that. That aspect from Saturn and Uttara Bhadrapada is actually going to make Uranus sit still for a little bit. And so you're going to have this spark of innovation and creativity, especially if you have your own business or own creative outlook that you are adding and growing and building on. This can also extend to your personal life, where maybe you have this sudden wave of romance and you're like, I want to do these things with my partner, or I'm dating someone outside my usual type, or I just feel like doing things different in the romantic sphere in my life. That could be happening as well. Short trips are definitely a major theme here, much like the gold trade when it came to the Ghanaian Empire that led to this mix of different cultures. There's this mindset that you might want to go to different places and be around towns and go out of the country and go to a different state or a different region and talk to new people and get this travel experience and go to new restaurants, bars, places, what's hot, what's in, what's not. Like, you want to know what's going on. And you're in this mindset to do so, especially when we have Saturn in the third house. One warning with this is because Saturn's in the third house in Uttara Bhadrapada, this can bring a lot of internalized stress and pressure and maybe even intrusive thoughts. So you might actually be very hard on yourself at this time. Don't do that if that is you. Focus on the good things about this. I will say it's really great when you have Saturn in the third house. Yes, you get the intrusive thoughts, but then you also get the remedy for the intrusive thoughts and you learn how to address them. And you just say, no, that's not me. That's not me. I mean, it's a little bit more than that, but that's one of the things that can be a part of this journey of transformation when it comes to having more control over your mind. So generally, this is about grinding away when it comes to any sort of creative expression, any sort of education, learning things, driving. People could get their license at this time. Doesn't matter your age. If you live in New York, some people don't have their license, right? Especially if you live in a city. You're like, oh, never got my license. Now you could be getting your license because it's needed. Let me tell you guys, I remember when Saturn transited my third house, oh, so irritating. It was good, but it was irritating. And it was just always being in traffic, driving an hour, driving 2 hours, driving 2 hours and a half. And that's just one way. That's not the way forward and back. That's one way. Long commutes. And so you get the long commutes along with the long travels. And this is why I say Saturn going through the third house is like good for overseas travel as well, or long distance trip, because Saturn's going to make you sit in some sort of transportation for a long time. It says you got to be patient here. You're on this train, you're on this plane for a long time, you're on this boat, you're just going to be floating there. So that is something that could be happening here. Where am I at here? You may also feel like you want to provide more security for any children or even just young children within your life. And you might feel as though there is a lot of outside forces that, they need protection from. And you're going to try to find the best ways to establish security for them. Whether that's like, okay, well, I'm going to teach them this is what you do within an emergency or stranger danger, or even just like, I want to set my kids up so that in the future, they don't have to worry about financial security. So this is what I'm talking about. You're like, I'm trying to establish security for my child at this time. And so I can definitely see some changes within your routine based upon that and wanting to focus your mind within that area. So you may notice an increase in communications or interactions from people from different backgrounds, race, and cultures. I don't necessarily think Saturn in the third house just automatically brings a bunch of people in your life, but it can bring about more serious conversations and more intellectual conversations. And it's definitely going to bring about more useful skill sets that you never had before that you're going to need. Because Saturn's like, okay, I want to bring you some skill sets you never had before. Uranus is like, I want you to do something creative that most people can't even do. Because the fifth house is the third from the third. And so it's also skills. So it's like, okay, I'm bringing you some very useful skills and some very unique skills. So there's something that's going on here in terms of that. As I mentioned, this can result in high levels of anxiety that can create a sense of fearfulness. If we look back at European history, there's this deep-seated fear of invaders or during that time, or people leaned on their neighbors for security. And so you might even have a similar dynamic where people are leaning on you for assistance or knowledge or comfort, or you might even be doing the same. So you might have some people reach out to you and just say, you know what, you seem like you're knowledgeable of this, like, can you help me with that, right? You can have that happening. And I think I did that to a Capricorn recently. So sorry, Capricorns, for pestering you. But I'm not going to be the only one at this time. Expansion, taking a short trip, as I mentioned before, to a city completely changes your perspective on things. Using AI to streamline your businesses, content creation, freeing up more time, like figuring out how you can apply new tools to make your life easier, like they did in Ghana. You might also be securing some new educational path, as I mentioned before, or like, how can I create a protective environment for not just my children, but sometimes your mind, right? Like, how can I protect my mind from things that make me feel bad or make me feel insecure or destabilize me mentally? And so you spend less time on social media. Maybe for some of you, you actually refuse to explore new places because you're like, I'm guarded and I don't trust any place that's not home. And you miss out on vital inspiration at this time. Don't do that, guys. Go out there and explore. You also have the grinding away in a creative space, but you might be a little bit too in the zone. Take some time, take a break to get out your space. And you don't want to get into a place where you're feeling a little bit exhausted or burnt out. As I mentioned before, with that Uranus Krittika energy in the beginning, we also have feeling overwhelmed by outside forces, you know, and so you might feel like too many people are bothering you. Too many people, too many demands are out there. You're too mentally active. Saturn in the third house, just general, doesn't matter what aspect or transit, or not transit, or sign that it's in. It can generally bring a heaviness of the mind. And Uttara Bhadrapada, it's very heavy because Saturn's in its own placement. It likes being there, so the results are better, but it's still very, very heavy, you know. All right. Then we have you lovely Aquariuses. We are almost done, guys. You guys know I love doing the signs, so I give lots of information. And so if you're coming in now, we're doing the signs, we're doing Aquarius, we're talking about Uranus and Krittika, sextiling Saturn, Uttara Bhadrapada, the first time in over 1,000 years that this is happening. And so I'm explaining how this could be affecting you and your chart. So if you want these insights, stay tuned. If I've already passed your sign, go ahead and scroll on back and go ahead and look at this. I'll add the timestamps later so that you guys can get an understanding of what is going to play out. But we're almost done. We're on Aquarius. Let's get started. And don't mind me if you see my rubbing nose. I think I'm allergic to something. My nose is stuffed right now. But I don't know what's happening. So, Aquarius. Back to my notes here. This transit impacts your home roots along with your house of earned income and values. While this touches on your foundations, you're likely going to create more independence through opportunities presented to you. Similar to what I was saying when it comes to Sagittarius, you guys could also be moving at this time. Maybe landlords raising the rent. Maybe you get kicked out. Maybe you just don't like the place you're at. You're like, I got to get out of here. I got to move, you know. There could be going on like there. You could even encounter your dream home and say, wow, I like it here. I want to move over here. So at this time, you're expanding your businesses and definitely your financial resources. You're like, I got to make that moolah. You're specifically probably working people from different backgrounds than you. And you're likely to encounter people who might introduce you to new opportunities and ways of thinking and new ways to gain wealth or save money or invest, depending on your perspective. Or they can just give you the ins and outs of certain businesses or financial systems or how money works within your industry and how things move. There's definitely a time where you're thinking deeply about your financial situation, specifically how to bring more stability into it, how to grow it, how to nurture it. And you're looking at what you have to offer in terms of your skill sets and your assets that can be of value or used to others. It's a powerful time to being strategic about your savings and perhaps specifying for a new property or a saving for a new property or even just some other new life experience that you always want. I can definitely see like a change in structure when it comes to like I said, your routine, certain placements, 6th house, 10th house, even 3rd house, 7th house can change your routine. That's something, and obviously the 1st house, but you know, it's really going to depend a lot on the person, but I wouldn't be surprised, be on the lookout for that. You'll be more calculated about your personal and professional plans. I do also want to say when we talk about the 2nd and 4th house, because we have Saturn here, in the 2nd house, and then we have the 4th house in Uranus. Well, when Saturn's in the 2nd house, as I'm constantly doing the chart readings. And one thing that I've seen by doing these little chart readings, I don't know, I'm saying these little, they're actually quite time consuming, not little at all, guys. Trust me, I'm very detailed. Look how long I've been talking here. I have noticed that Saturn going through the 2nd house actually brings a lot of marriages or long-term committed relationships, usually marriage, but you know, everyone's different these days. So, it usually brings a lot of marriage. And so when we have the 4th and the 2nd house being highlighted, both of these things having to do with family, you could actually be looking to, grow a family at this time. And more than likely, this person is definitely going to be from a different cultural background. I know we talked about the traditionalism going on here, but with Uranus in the 4th house, it's really not going to be traditional for you guys at all. It's going to be someone who's not exactly in line with what people might see you with, or who they think you might date, or even just who you might be surprised that you're dating. That's something that could be going on there. And then also this can represent hitting new emotional goals. You know, like let's say you were somebody who was avoidant and you're like, you know what, I tend to avoid those hard conversations. Well, this is the time where you're like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm actually going to think about opening up and trying to have those conversations now. And that'll actually be really beneficial for you. I'll say that. For those of you who choose not to and choose to continue and, you know, not be in that vulnerable space, I'll definitely think you'll feel a little bit of sadness and even resentment for not doing so, just based upon the transit. You might feel like you're trading your sense of security or self-worth for a relationship that doesn't seem worth it. You know, you're giving more than you are getting back. So I would advise you to, you know, open up, be a little bit like open in that way. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But this is definitely great because you're sharing more of your personal self with the people out there. This can also look like you are auditing a unique skill set that you have and trying to repurpose that service so that it meets any sort of global gap or what people need. Doesn't have to be global, it could be a local gap. You are starting a dedicated savings plan for a new property, you know, or significant travel or whatever expense that you were looking to buy, a car, you know, there's lots of things people want to buy. You're partnering with professionals of different cultural backgrounds to launch a business or even just at a new job to launch a product. Like I said, for some way, this could also be suppressing some of your own talents because you're just like, I don't know, you feel like you don't want to take a risk and you're like, this feels low stake and I don't want to mess things up. I feel like I have things good here and things seem all right for now. It's not too bad. So maybe, you know, I'll kind of stay here. Economy's hard. Let's not push the envelope. Things are kind of tough already. This can also represent like I'm going to refuse to adapt my financial habits or adapt to the new technologies or markets and remain stagnant. And, you know, then you get outpaced by the market. And so don't do that, guys. Don't do that. You know, don't be the average citizen selling your property and your skills and the things that are valuable to the lords for the illusion of security, right? Then we have you hiding your financial ambitions or desires for new property or new place to live because you might feel judgment or backlash, or you're like, you know what, I don't even think they'll really understand what I'm trying to do here. So I'm not going to share that information out there, but share it because even if they don't understand, somebody else will, and you can find a different crowd or group who might accept you. Now, I got to do my hair, guys. I'm a mess. I'm a mess right now. I am a mess. All right. So for Pisces, this transit moves through your house of communication and local community along with your house of self and identity. This is a highly personalized reset where the way you speak and the way you see yourself are undergoing a massive transformation. You know, you guys are like the Tauruses because this is happening to you. You may find that, you know, you are editing your communication or structuring the way, a specific way sometimes in which you communicate with others. And, you know, sometimes this looks like self-censorship. Sometimes this looks like, you know, choosing I statements when it comes to a conflict rather than, you know, blatantly being honest or taking blame or saying you do this and doing all that blame game stuff. You say, okay, I'm not going to do that. I want to keep it low friction. I will say this, you know, this is a revolutionary period because, as I mentioned before, the first house is all about you. You know, all of the aspects of your life are being highlighted right now. And I'll say this, whether you're sun, moon, or rising, it doesn't matter. Obviously with the rising, it's going to be more prevalent in terms of like your whole life being highlighted, but you guys will still feel a lot of these same things going on. So I should have said that probably in the beginning, but I mean, you can go look at any other video. I have the same mindset when it comes to the sign placements. You read this as your sun, moon, or rising. So you are likely going to bring in more health and vitality into your life by transferring your appearance and your mindset. However, you might feel a sense of insecurity based on structures shifting around. You might notice gaps in leadership within your environment, which serves as a motivation to become more self-reliant. You're like, man, nobody's got the answers. I'm going to have to figure it out myself. That's what's going on here. And since the third house connects to courage, this is a time to take a chance and open up your world, right? And that could be meeting new people, that could be traveling, that could be, I don't know, gaining some new skill, going about town, trying something new, being adventurous. Last year or year before last, I did flying trapeze, guys. So that would be something that's very, brave and out there. Face your fears, right? And I'm scared of heights. So that this time can be like, oh, I'm going to face my fears. I'm going to do something bold. Like, this is third house, guys. Definitely can see some changes in your structure, routine. As I said, third house can do that as well. Some surprises may unfold for you when it comes to the people you're meeting, or when it comes to certain communications that are out there. You might even have some aha moments, because the Pisces sign in general has to do with self-awareness. And so you actually might get some feedback that helps you learn how you are perceived more by other people, which can be quite useful in a way. I love things like that. So I love hearing feedback from people. I know some people can get offended, but I'm an Aries fire sign. I love that stuff. We're kind of out there. We're kind of wild. So, this can be adopting a new communication style, as I mentioned before, or a script for difficult conversations. Like for me, this can be something along the lines of like, I am choosing a different format, right? I'm coming out here very scripted. This is how I'm going to walk through things. I'm going to talk about the history. I'm going to talk a little bit about the placements. I'm going to go through the signs. Very structured communication style here that I have brought about, and I'm trying to get used to, where I think before, when I started doing the astrological signs, I did have a script, but they wasn't necessarily formatted in this context and in this way. And so this could be something about your communication that is undergoing some tweaks in formation, whether that has to do with the things that you write, the things that you read, the media that you consume. You could be restructuring your media. Like, you could be someone who you were younger, you watched a lot of movies, you read a lot of books, and now you're just like, you know what? I like podcasts now. So, that could be the thing. Definitely an overhaul in your appearance in your life. Saturn in the first house wants to give you a glow up. Saturn is the Cinderella nakshatra. It's like, hey, you're cute, but why are you covered in ashes? Like, why you look a little dusty? You want to get your hair done? Like, I could probably get my hair done. my skin is so dry. But anyway, I'm being self-conscious right now. But Saturn wants to give you a glow up. It wants you to make some changes. It wants you to do things differently. And so that could be happening for you. Physical health could improve, vitality, all of that. As I mentioned, being very creative, leaping into a new project, a new venture, a new circumstance, doing some things people around you don't typically do. I'm just going to say that coming here. Because the third house is your immediate environment. And with Uranus there, it's like, let's do something crazy, like it's like that type of vibe with Pisces going on. I will say this, you are someone who is like, I'm not going to allow any gaps in leadership or guidance around me to make me feel insecure. I'm going to actually step up to the plate, and you're going to be forced to do so. Saturn in the first house actually brings more responsibility to you. And Saturn is what? The ruler of the 10th house, the house of authority and boss. So actually at this time, this actually puts you in more in a position of being a manager, being a leader, having somebody who has responsibilities, heavy responsibilities. Saturn's a heavy planet, has the most moons out of any planet. All the moons are around Saturn. They say, we love you. You take care of us, Saturn. So this is like a heavy responsibility here. Like, you got all these moons to take care of. So that could be happening for you. You could feel a lot of weight and feel like you are having this never-ending task list going on here. And then also it's good because if you think of the Ghanaian Empire, it's like never-ending opportunities to meet people. So I do want to say, even if you got to hustle, these hustle moments can actually be very, very beneficial for you. It can turn into a golden age, similar to how we kind of said in the other video as well. For some of you, this could actually look like refusing to take a chance on new ideas, or being stuck in one area because you're like, oh, I don't have the courage and I'm a little bit scared. And this is my first time, I don't know, traveling to Italy or by myself or doing a solo venture. And you're like, oh no. And then sometimes this is, I'm stuck in my old identity, right? I'm stuck in my old habits. I'm used to doing things this way and that way, and I'm not used to being in this space where I need to level up, I need to change, and I need to transform. And it feels like, it feels different. It feels like I want to stick with what I know. And it could be something as simple as like, let's say you're someone who dresses conservatively and you've always kind of dressed a little conservatively. Saturn comes here and it says, I want to put you in a mini skirt. And you're just like, I don't know. I don't think I look good in a mini skirt. And, you know, I've got cellulite and I just don't look good. And Saturn's like, all right, well, you're missing out on opportunities with that mini skirt. You know, you could be the next Lauren Sanchez, married to Jeff Bezos. Put on the mini skirt, you know what I mean? So this is what I'm talking about here. It's just like, get out your comfort zone a little bit. That could happen, or you might miss out on opportunities to marry a billionaire. I'm just joking, guys. But anyway, but yeah, sometimes you might want to censor your thoughts from people around you who aren't ready for a level of honesty. And then sometimes you're going to be having more honest conversations that actually could surprise you and turn out pretty well, especially since you have Uranus in the 3rd house. You're like, oh, okay, I didn't think that conversation would go that way. So I think that is all I have for you guys when it comes to what could be happening for you signs. And thank you for anyone who has listened to me, who has joined in. I cannot even see who's joined in. I don't know why. I get that error sometimes. But I know I'm live because I've seen your comments, and hopefully you like the video. I'm going to add the timestamps probably tomorrow sometime, so be on the lookout for that. If I pop up next week, this week, it will either be on the weekend, maybe. I'll have to check and see. But ultimately, like, I have a lot to do this week. I am actually going out of the country in a couple of days, so I don't think I'll pop up. I just have a lot to cover. But if I do, it's on the weekend and you guys can see me there. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I love doing the astrology for you guys, and sorry for my appearance. I've got to fix this hair. I really do. I've got to do something about it. I look a mess and my skin's dry. I just need a little level up moment, but that is what I have for you. And I will see you next time. Stay safe, stay beautiful. Don't forget to stay tuned for this week's what am I saying? Don't forget to stay tuned for this week's reading, scheduled Thursday at noon. And that is all I want to say. And I'll see you. Bye.